Please put your hands together for Patricia Brennan!
So, I grew up in a dusty little Iowa town in the 50s, and it was dusty because our roads weren't paved yet. So in the summer, to keep the dust down, the tar trucks would roll through and lay down that yucky, mucky, stinky hot tar, and it would stick to our flip-flops for days. So yeah, our town was pretty drab. But then my elegant Aunt Mary would sweep into town, driving her light blue Cadillac and smoking Chesterfield cigarettes on long, slender holders, and she made my world sparkle. To an impressionable young girl, Aunt Mary was an enticing role model, and on her visits, I studied her like she was a foreign language. I loved the sound of her silvery laugh, and the tinkling of her bracelets, and the ice cubes in her scotch glass. Aunt Mary did like her scotch. A doctor tried to pin her down once. "Mary, how much do you drink?" "Oh, darling," she said, "I never measure." She used to let us girls help her unpack, and I'd lightly finger her delicate, silky things, so different from my mother's. Mom wore an apron every day, all day. Usually it was dishwater wet across the middle, because that's what happens when you're raising 9 kids. And I wondered if I could ever be sophisticated like Aunt Mary. And I gotta say, my chances seemed pretty remote, standing there in my pedal pushers and my tarry flip-flops. Aunt Mary had a theme song, and she sang and played it on the piano. It was called Doodly-Doo. Please play for me that sweet melody called Doodly-Doo. You get the message. It was this frothy tune from the Roaring 20s. And I'd watch her fingers fly over the keys, and I couldn't help but see the wedding ring on her finger. In the long ago past, Aunt Mary had been married, but it was a hush-hush thing. My family never talked about it. So, cut to the 1968, and I landed at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where a whole generation of us turned into cynics overnight. We were fighting a revolution to end the Vietnam War. And I got into this new culture, and suddenly my whole past seemed completely irrelevant. What it felt like to me was I'd grown a layer of Teflon, and all my childhood ideals and icons, they just slid off me in one piece. Being like Aunt Mary was no longer what I thought of as a powerful woman. My new role models were the feminist, and I didn't think Betty Friedan would think much of Doodly-Doo. One day, Aunt Mary called and said she'd be driving by Madison on her way up north. Would I like to meet her for lunch? So I made up my mind I was not going to play any games. I was going to come as I was. So I showed up in my bell-bottom jeans to the restaurant, and my long hair parted in the middle, tied back with a leather cord. And Aunt Mary wrapped me in a Bonwit Teller hug anyway. "Hello, darling." And we sat down for lunch, and then the story behind the wedding ring unfolded. Aunt Mary had married a dashing charmer named Jack, and he had a large sales territory in Illinois, and she adored him right up until the day the parish priest landed on their doorstep, and his face was ashen with the news that he had to deliver. Jack was a bigamist, and right then he was with his other wife and their children. Well, I sat there stunned. Not only that Aunt Mary had suffered this terrible treachery, but that she was telling me about it, talking woman to woman. Somehow, she'd immediately sensed my deep need for authenticity at that time in my life. So I said, Aunt Mary, what did you do? And she told me a rash broke out, hives broke out all over her body. And she was so depressed, she went to bed for days. Then her brother Ambrose, who owned a big farm, asked her help with a problem he had. Rodents were overtaking his cornfields. So he gave Aunt Mary a pistol. What? A pistol, a rat-shooting pistol. And Aunt Mary set up her own target practice by lining corn cobs up on the fence post. And once she could shoot every last one down in a row, she took to the cornfields on her horse after those rats. And I'm pretty sure everyone was named Jack. And she blasted away her depression and exploded away that rash. And in the process, she exterminated every last rodent on Uncle Ambrose's farm. So that lunch with my gunslinging aunt may have been the real beginning of my growing up. I had been seeing everything in black and white, and Aunt Mary brought back the Technicolor. And my ideas of what made a strong woman became more complex. I realized that one choice a strong woman can make is to embrace life with joie de vivre. So cheers, Aunt Mary. Here's to living life without measure.